Thanks very much for that glowing bio. And again, thanks as well for the invitation to speak here today. You're probably going to be hearing stuff that you've heard earlier on in the context of the other speakers, because it's really reinforced for me the similarities and the common themes in terms of the issues and the experiences of ethnic minority ethnic women. So you will see a similarity. The National Traveller Women's Forum is a national network, like Stacia said, of traveller women's groups and traveller organisations throughout Ireland. And it was established in 1988, where a small number of traveller women and a few country women, or settled women should I say, came together to give a voice to the issues and experiences of traveller women in terms of sort of self-representation, having their own voice out there, and self-determination. We work from a human rights-based approach, and we see equality and freedom from discrimination, racism and oppression, both internally and within the state, as part of our core human rights as women and as members of an minority ethnic group. We recognise the diversity, which was spoken about earlier today as well, because we're traveller women, but within that there's a very, very rich diversity in terms of the experiences, the age, the socio-economic status, the educational levels and economic activity. Traveller women have been to the fore in the struggle for equality and traveller rights in Ireland over the past decades and decades, and do continue to play that role. In particular, they played a significant role in advocacy and representational work within the traveller movement, and also in the context in engaging with policymakers, and have done that in the development of a range of strategies in terms of a traveller education strategy, traveller accommodation strategy, traveller health study. The one key piece there, though, is that the rollout and the implementation of that doesn't necessarily follow from the state. Travellers as a whole are subjected to widespread negative stereotypes and perceptions within Irish society, and experience racism in almost all aspects of their lives. And this then is reinforced with gender stereotyping, which has been spoken very well about this morning by Fakra. I hope I pronounced your name right. You put it really well, and I'm not going to go over it again. But just to say, it's like being a woman from a minority ethnic group, being a traveller woman. It's like we're not ambitious for ourselves, that we don't have aspirations and we don't have expectations. And I think in education, we're starting to see that really sort of come to the fore, with more and more traveller women having opportunities in terms of both staying on longer and completing second level and then third level opportunities, even though we're not as far as we need to be. I won't go into sort of the various disciplines where traveller women are, but just to say at the moment there are 2 young traveller women in third year within the Royal College of Surgeons, and I think that's a very significant development. Traveller women, I don't want to bog you down in statistics, but I do just want to give a bit of a flavour of the kind of challenges that still persist. Traveller women have a life expectancy of approximately 71 years, which is 11.5 years less than women in the general population. These are current statistics from the 2010 All-Ireland Traveller Health Study, which traveller women played a key role in as peer workers in gathering that research. Traveller infant mortality is estimated 14.1 per 1,000 live births. The general population of infant mortality rate is 3.9. Suicide rates among travellers is 6 times the national average, particularly with young traveller men. And then just to say as well, in terms of the employment, in 2002, the national census showed that 63% of traveller women at that time were unemployed, in comparison to 8% of the national. And I think that's probably got worse in the intervening years. You'll see from the video in a little while the traveller women's own personal accounts in terms of ethnicity. But just to say that the Irish state continues to, it fails to continue to recognise travellers as an ethnic minority. And the issues that I spoke about earlier, just a little while ago, are compounded. It compounds the inequality and racism experienced by travellers. Expression of identity and pride in identity is an important feature of creating a sense of belonging and mutual respect in a society. And the key consequence of this continued denial by the state is to further marginalise an already excluded group. Last week, the National Traveller Monitoring and Advisory Committee, which is established in the Traveller Policy section within the Department of Justice, hosted a conference, Traveller Ethnicity and Exploration. A very strong message came from this conference that travellers should be granted ethnic status by the Irish state. And this was from both the academic speakers and the two traveller women who spoke on their own behalf and on behalf of other travellers. Some of the issues that came out within that were self-identification, strong sense of identity and pride in that identity as travellers, the legal framework in which travellers, in terms of which the criteria of what defines an ethnic minority ethnic group, and how that applies and is applicable to travellers. And I also felt that one of the big pieces for me was the personal stories of what it meant to traveller women in relation to having their culture and heritage recognised and valued, and what that then means for them and their families. Now, we don't think for 1 minute that if we were granted ethnic status today, as much as we'd love it, that we'll wake up tomorrow and everything will be rosy. The struggle won't stop, and it will continue in terms of trying to ensure travellers and their human rights are granted. But what it will mean is a gradual shift and a move towards where we want to be, and also a shift in the attitudes in terms of how travellers are perceived within Irish society. This conference hasn't been the beginning by any shape or means. Traveller organisations have been campaigning for the past 20-25 years in terms of travellers and their ethnicity and their culture being valued. And so I think some of the work of the Irish traveller movement has to be applauded in that, in how much they've been to the fore in delivering on some of that. Also, the UN Committee on the Elimination of Racism and Discrimination, of which Stacia here is a member, have been consistently saying, since Ireland gave their first and second report to that third committee, I think in the mid-90s, Stacia, I could stand corrected on that. No, in 2000, yeah, in mid-2000. You would think I would remember, I was in Geneva that day. CERD have been really strong in coming back around the fact that travellers fit the criteria, they are an ethnic minority, and that the state should bite the bullet and accept the responsibility and do the right thing in relation to travellers and recognise their ethnic status. And in their latest follow-up report on the Irish government's second and third and combined third and fourth report to CERD, again they're calling on the Irish government to recognise travellers as an ethnic group and really emphasising the right to self-identification, because it's one of the weakest points that the state have made in relation to why they haven't already recognised travellers is that there's a divergence of views. It's an absolute point in terms of the overall context. Our experience as traveller women of inequality and discriminations differs from that of women from the minority population, as the experience of traveller women for data collection and monitoring. There's been little positive developments in data collection in important policy areas. This almost complete lack of data, particularly disaggregated data, makes the monitoring of the situation of traveller women and other minority ethnic women virtually impossible. And I think unless you know what the issues are and in terms of ensuring the accurate responses, and there does need to be the data in relation to some of that. I'd also just say, I mean, just to pick up on a couple of points then as well, I'm not going to go into them in too much detail, but I just wanted to make them before I finish. I think the need for the reporting of incidents of racism is hugely significant. What's happened in this country in the past 8 to 10 years or so has been a dismantling of equality and human rights infrastructure. And it has been systematic, and it has come long before the economic crisis has hit. And since then, the cuts in this area have been disproportionate to cuts in other areas. So I think anything that holds on to that kind of, the need for that racism and that experience of racism to be captured is hugely important. And the NCCRI, before all funding was cut, how many years back now, Stacia?
3.5.
About 3.5. They had, you could report racist incidents to them. And in 2008, they had over 160 incidents of racism reported to them. That in itself was underreported, but at least there was a place to be able to go with that and to be able to capture that. Just finally also, and it has been spoken about in some of the earlier presentations, the portrayal of travellers in the media has been a hugely negative portrayal, and which reinforces a lot of that stereotyping I was talking about. And also in some of the television media, we've seen real exploitation of traveller women. And it's going unchallenged, and it's going on, it's been done without fear of any kind of comeback in relation to when it's a particular group. We've also seen in very recent times a number of very troubling statements, and from really, pillars of supposedly the society. I mean, a few weeks back, a district court judge, made appalling statements in relation to, directed them at a man that was in front of him, but literally, inferred it to the entire community in terms of travellers. We've also seen, and it's a bit ironic, although not surprising, our current Minister for Environment, which holds the brief in relation to housing. A letter has come into the public domain in the last week or so, and his statements in relation to travellers supporting local residents in writing on their behalf to not allow a traveller to have access to a home. And that's the reality of the people we're engaged with at policy level. I'm going to finish, because I'm going to stop, in relation to, I'd like to just bring it back to the need for solidarity and building alliances between minority ethnic women, and that link that needs to be made. We have common issues, and there is crossover. And sometimes we can be our own worst enemies, because I think sometimes we don't stand up enough for each other, or we don't stand up if it's not a popular issue. And we do need to be more joined up, and we do need to be making the links, as Stacia was saying earlier on, in terms of ensuring collective strength and having that solidarity in adversity. I can't even pronounce the word, but you know what I mean. Go around.